Number 1. DDR1. Alright, let's rewind to the year 2000. Back then, computers weren't exactly speed demons. They ran on something called SDRAM, single data rate. Picture a one-lane highway where only one car can pass at a time. That's SDRAM. Every time you clicked an icon or opened a program, the RAM sent one chunk of data, waited, then sent another. It worked fine for solitaire, but when Windows got heavier and games like Doom demanded more, that single lane turned into a parking lot. Enter DDR1, double data rate. Think of it as the same highway, but now two cars can drive side by side. Suddenly, loading times shrank and stutters vanished. DDR1 ran up to 400 MHz and maxed out at 1 gig per stick. For 2000 standards, that was plenty for office work, internet browsing, and light gaming. But here's the catch. DDR1 drank electricity like a V8 engine, 2.5 volts. That's a lot for a tiny chip. More voltage means more heat, and when RAM overheats, your PC freezes, crashes, or throws a blue screen right in the middle of your term paper. To make things worse, DDR1 lived during the era of Windows Millennium Edition, or Windows ME, which tech historians called a dumpster fire of operating systems. ME crashed if you looked at it wrong. So you had overheating RAM plus an OS that rebooted every hour. It was a perfect storm of frustration. Still, DDR1 was the first real step toward responsive computing. It just ran hot and lived in a terrible neighborhood. Number 2. DDR2. By 2004, engineers fixed the heat problem. DDR2 drops the voltage to 1.8 volts. That's a 28% reduction. Less heat, less crash, happier computers. Speeds jumped to 800 MHz on high-end sticks, and capacities hit 2 to 4 GB per module. That meant you could now open a web browser, Word, and Winamp at the same time without your PC begging for mercy. But there's always a but. DDR2 had a different notch position, physically moved closer to the middle. Why? So you couldn't accidentally jam a DDR1 stick into a DDR2 slot. Smart, but annoying if you bought the wrong RAM. The real problem? Price. DDR2 was expensive, like do I buy RAM or pay rent expensive? And to use it, you needed a new motherboard because the slot changed. So many people looked at DDR2, looked at their wallets, and stuck with DDR1. The performance per dollar just wasn't there. Also, DDR2 launched right when Windows XP was finally stable, so that was a win. But the upgrade path hurt. It's like buying a faster car but also having to repave your whole driveway. Not fun. Number 3. DDR3. Now we're talking. DDR3 arrived in 2007 and changed the game for regular folks. Voltage dropped again to 1.5 volts, even cooler, even more battery life for laptops. Speeds ranged from 800 to 1600 MHz, later pushed to 2133 MHz, and capacities hit 4 to 8 GB per stick. That's enough for light photo editing, multitasking, and games like World of Warcraft. But the real magic was dual-channel technology. Here's how it works. Instead of one RAM stick moving data on its own, you install two identical sticks. They work as a team, splitting the workload. It's like two checkout lanes instead of one. Everything moves faster. Dual-channel is especially clutch for computers with integrated graphics like Intel HD graphics or AMD APUs. Those chips don't have their own VRAM. They borrow your system RAM. So dual-channel literally doubles the bandwidth for graphics, giving you smoother video playback and higher FPS in games. Huge for budget gaming rigs. But here's the rookie mistake people made. Mixing RAM sticks. You could pair a faster stick with a slower one, but the system would drag everything down to the slowest speed. You could try to overclock in the BIOS, but that often led to crashes. Even mixing same-speed sticks from different brands could cause random errors because the internal chips or circuit designs differ. So rule of thumb, buy a matched pair. Same speed, same brand, same capacity. Now you'd think DDR3 made 2007 computers fly. They didn't, because 2007 also gave us Windows Vista. Oh boy. Vista was gorgeous, translucent windows, fancy animations, but it ate RAM for breakfast. A clean Vista install needed 2 GB just to breathe. And games like Crysis, the original but can it run Crysis monster, pushed hardware to its knees. So DDR3's potential only really shined when Windows 7 dropped in 2009. Suddenly, everything felt snappy. Moral of the story? Great RAM needs a great OS partner. Number 4. DDR4. Fast forward to 2014.
DDR4 became the new standard and it stuck around forever, like 9 years of dominance. Speed started at 2133 MHz and climbed to 3600 MHz or higher with overclocking. Capacities jumped to 8 to 16 gigabytes per stick, with some server sticks hitting 32 gigabytes. This was the era where you could edit 4K video, stream on Twitch, run a dozen Chrome tabs, yes, Chrome the memory hog, and play GTA 5 without breaking a sweat. The voltage dropped again to 1.2 volts, super efficient, and unlike previous generations, DDR4 had no major OS disaster to fight. It launched alongside Windows 8.1 and matured with Windows 10, smooth sailing. But let's talk about how much RAM you actually need, because this confuses everyone. 8 gigabytes, the bare minimum for browsing, Netflix, and Office. But with Chrome eating 2 gigabytes just for 3 tabs, 8 gigabytes feels cramped. You'll hit 100% usage fast. 16 gigabytes is the sweet spot. You can game, edit 1080p video, and keep 20 tabs open. Most AAA games list 16 gigabytes in system requirements. 32 gigabytes for power users, programming, virtual machines, heavy video editing, or gaming while streaming and chatting on Discord. Overkill for most, but future-proof. Here's the kicker. More RAM doesn't mean more FPS past a point. If a game needs 12 gigabytes, going from 8 gigabytes to 12 gigabytes gives a huge boost. But going from 16 gigabytes to 32 gigabytes, you'll see zero difference because the game isn't using the extra. It's like buying a 20-gallon gas tank for a car that only holds 10. So don't waste money on RAM you won't use.
Number 5. DDR5. DDR5 launched in 2020 and it's basically a supercomputer in a stick. Speeds start at 4800 MHz and go up to 6000 plus MHz. Capacities 8 gigabytes, 16 gigabytes, 32 gigabytes per stick, and soon 64 gigabytes. Voltage is even lower at 1.1 volts. But the headline feature is ECC, Error Correcting Code. Traditionally, ECC was for expensive server RAM. DDR5 builds a basic version directly into every chip. What does it do? It detects and fixes tiny data errors on the fly. You know those random app crashes or file corruptions? ECC stops them before they happen. It's like having a spell checker for your memory. For gamers, DDR5 gives 10 to 20% higher FPS in CPU-heavy titles compared to DDR4. For creators, it slashes render times. But there's a catch: price. DDR5 is expensive, and as of this recording, we're in a RAM shortage because AI data centers are buying up all the RAM chips. Prices have skyrocketed. So for most people, DDR4 is still the smart buy. But if you're building a high-end rig for 4K editing or hardcore gaming, DDR5 is the future. Just make sure your motherboard supports it because the notch moved again and you can't backward compat.